Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the internet, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I'm, of course, your host, John Campea. It's an awesome honor and privilege to have you guys joining me here today, as it is every day, as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all that sorts of good stuff. It's Friday, guys. Congratulations, you made it to the end of the week. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend planned out ahead of you. Actually, Ann and I are going to be taking off to go out of town. We're going to go up to Northern California for some really good friends' wedding that's being done up there. So we're looking forward to that. As a result, just to give you guys a heads up right now, normally open mic is at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But because Ann and I have to get out of here, we're actually going to move open mic up to 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time just for today. So once again, open mic today will be at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hope to see you guys there. All right, now let's get things kicked off here with what we usually kick off the show, which is going over the results of yesterday's question of the day. And of course, yesterday's question of the day was revolving around the James Gunn situation and the fact that Disney is indeed going to be using James Gunn's script. Now, in light of Alan Horn's statements a few weeks ago saying we are severing all business relationships with James Gunn, is the fact that Disney is still going to use his script hypocritical, or do we look at it in a good way, that it's a compromise? I think there's fair ways to look at it both ways. We asked you guys, and the voting, as expected, was close, but here's the results of yesterday's question of the day. And the question of, is Disney using James Gunn's Guardian script hypocritical or a compromise? Margin, very small middle, just by a different minds of it. 1 minute I'm thinking, yeah, it was a totally hypocrite move of them to do. If you're going to badmouth the guy and say you're severing all business relationships with him, well, guess what? Using his script is not severing business relationships. But at the same time, you're removing him as the director to keep his script and to still have him in the credits. Maybe that's their olive branch of saying, here's a compromise. So I think there are two very good ways of looking at that, and it showed in your guys' voting, pretty much down the middle, but by just a little bit of margin, you guys say Disney's being hypocritical by doing that. All right, now before we get to our main topics, we got a couple things to get to off the top. And off the top first, we've known for a little while that there is a brand new Star Wars animated show coming called Star Wars Resistance. And just a short time ago this morning, the first trailer dropped online. Now, of course, one of the key interesting things about this new animated show is not only that it's going to have some recognizable characters like Poe Dameron and Captain Phasma, but like Oscar Isaac himself is voicing Poe Dameron. Now, one of the first things that stands out to you when you watch this trailer is it is a completely different animation style from what we're used to seeing in these Star Wars shows, like the whole Clone Wars and to some other degree Rebels, the animation style they've had in those shows. This is clearly a very different kind of animation style. And I'll tell you what, the first second or two, it threw me off a bit because I'm used to seeing a certain type of animation with Star Wars shows, but it grew on me. I gotta say I like the animation. It's also kind of cool hearing Oscar Isaac's voice in there. The trailer makes it clear Oscar Isaac is not the key character of this show. He's going to be a side character, kind of a little bit like a Professor Dumbledore character to a young cadet sort of thing. That said, I thought the trailer was ass. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was just terrible. And I mean, you know what? Let me recant on that a bit. There are some good things about it. Number one, the animation style does look pretty cool. That's great. Again, I like the idea that they're getting a couple like Gwendolyn Christie and Oscar Isaac to come in and do voices. I like that. That's a thumbs up. And maybe for its target demographic, it works. But unlike Rebels was very kid-friendly, but it wasn't targeted at 7-year-olds. Rebels was kid-friendly, but it wasn't targeted at 7-year-olds. This truly feels like a Saturday morning children's show. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. It's just that as Star Wars fans, a lot of people got excited hearing, hey, a new Star Wars animated show is coming. And I think a lot of people kind of thought it might be in the vein of a Clone Wars, which I also didn't really like Clone Wars, but a lot of you guys did. So a lot of people thought maybe it'll be in the same vein as Clone Wars, maybe it'll be in the same vein as Rebels, blah, blah, blah. This is clearly a show, from the trailer at least at any rate, that is aiming for a much lower age demographic. Like, this show is targeting a much lower age demographic. This looks like, at least the trailer presents it, like this is a show for children. And again, nothing wrong with making an animated show for children. Not at all. It's just that I kind of wish Disney, when announcing this Star Wars Resistance show, I kind of wish they had mentioned that. You know, we're making a true kids show. You know, we're really going to give kids something to enjoy and start developing a new generation of Star Wars fans. I just wish they had said something like that, you know, because I watched it and I'm like, Now here I am, a grown-ass man complaining about a cartoon, whatever. But, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like, the animated shows we've had up to this point, notwithstanding, you know, droids and the Ewoks, notwithstanding that stuff, has kind of aimed for the middle with a lot of kid-friendly stuff and stuff that adults fans of Star Wars could also appreciate. I think that's part of what's been the big wide appeal for things like Clone Wars and Rebels. But this to me just feels like it's going for children, and that's fine. I just wish they kind of mentioned that off the top. So yeah, I thought it was drivel. I really did. I thought it was drivel. So mark me as disappointed. The question is, what? Maybe you guys loved it. And like I said, I did like the style. The animation style was pretty cool. Maybe you guys loved it, and that's great if you did. Jump down to the comments section and leave your thoughts about what you thought of the new Star Wars Resistance trailer. I'm curious to read your thoughts, and maybe you can give me a different perspective to look at it, and I can change my mind, because you guys often change my mind. So let's see where we're at with that. All right. Next up on Off the Top, you know, we just talked about the James Gunn situation and how yesterday, looking at it, is Disney keeping his script hypocritical? Is it a compromise? I got an interesting email this morning that I thought, instead of addressing it next week, I would just bring it up in Off the Top here. So I got this email this morning from one of our viewers named David Nguyen, who writes, John, something I've been confused about is, why does Disney have to pay James Gunn $10 million for firing him? I don't think they should have fired him, but isn't what Gunn did grounds to justifiably let him go without more compensation if that's what they want to do? And what am I missing here? Okay, so where this is coming from is that the reports came out the other day that right now Disney and James Gunn are in negotiating him separating from Guardians of the Galaxy. And in that report, it was reported that Gunn is going to get anywhere between $7 to $10 million to not direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And the report said the number may actually be north of that. So it could be 12 million, 13 million, 15 million. I doubt it's much higher than that. But it could be anywhere between $7 and $15 million he's going to get for not working, which is a great deal, which is something you and I wish we could get fired like that every single day. But I have heard a couple of people ask, and David brings it up here this morning of, well, wait a minute, time out. Why does Disney have to pay him anything? I mean, certainly, hey, look, I don't agree with Disney's decision to let James Gunn go, but I understand the decision. And if that's what they want to do, I get it. Couldn't the old tweets and stuff like that, couldn't that be grounds for letting him go without having to pay him extra money? The answer to that question, I've seen a lot of people asking that lately. The answer to that question is no. No. Look, there's a term in employment law called termination with cause, right? Termination with cause. And with cause is for something really egregious. Like they found out you were stealing from the company, or you were violating massive company policies or whatever. In situations like that, a lot of times you can be terminated with cause, which means that even if we have an employment contract, all that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. We can fire you because you did something really heinous. You did something to violate our standards, our terms, all that kind of stuff, or you did something really egregious, right? Would this situation with James Gunn qualify as termination with cause? No. Not in the least. Not in the least, for a couple of very important reasons. Number one, To terminate with cause, James Gunn has to have done something, materially that damaged the company now. James Gunn hasn't done anything or broke any policies while working for Disney. While working for Disney, he has violated no policies. Certainly not egregiously violated any policies, right? So on that level, absolutely not. You can't terminate with cause. Secondly, and this is part of the big reason why they got to pay him out, is the fact that you can't fire somebody for something they did before. But also, you especially can't fire somebody with cause for something they did before that you already knew about. Disney, whether Alan Horn did or not, Disney knew about James Gunn's tweets. They knew. They would have to be the most incompetent pack of morons ever in history if they didn't do any background check on somebody as important as a director directing their film. Everybody does background checks on employees, particularly if they're going to be high-ranking employees. Disney knew. Disney knew. So here's an example. Let's say you hire me. Let's say you're running a company called Company X, and you've hired me to be a vice president. Okay. And my name's John Campea. Now, turns out your company, Company X, has a policy against people with the first name John. Can you then come to me and say, we are firing you with cause because you're violating one of our major policies here. You're egregiously violating one of our major policies. No employees with the first name John. We're going to let you go. Well, technically, I am in violation of the policy, but you still can't terminate me with clause because you knew my name was John when you hired me in the first place. So, whichever way you look at this, there is no grounds for Disney parting ways with James Gunn with cause. If they could, then they probably wouldn't have to pay him $10 million. That's the situation. So, the reason we're seeing Disney having to pay out James Gunn is because, number one, he didn't violate any policy while working for them. And number two, any pre-existing policy violation that happened beforehand is inadmissible anyway. But even if it wasn't, it's something Disney knew about beforehand because they were public. It wasn't hidden secrets. It wasn't something tucked away in his bottom drawer that somebody discovered. He didn't try to hide them by deleting old tweets or anything like that. Nope. They were out there in the open public. It was public knowledge. So that's the reason why. And again, I still don't blame Disney for wanting to part ways with James Gunn. Again, not something I would have done, but I don't blame them. I don't blame them. But you absolutely cannot. If you do want to part ways with him, you're going to have to pay the man his money because he didn't violate any company policies. And any perceived violation are things you knew about, or at least your company knew about before you brought him on. So that's why, for all you guys who've been asking the questions, I just still don't get it. Why does Disney have to pay James Gunn $10 million? I got fired from 7-Eleven and they didn't have to pay me $10 million. Well, there you go. That's why. Anyway, let's go on to the last thing here and off the top before we go to our main topics. And that is this. The brand new Mark Wahlberg, directed by Peter Berg film, Mile 22, is now out and in theaters. Now, I had a chance to slip on over there and go see Mile 22 yesterday. I was quite excited about this movie for a couple of reasons. First of all, I thought the action looked incredible. You got a tie-in to The Raid in there. And Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg are on an incredible hot streak in films that they've made together. Whether you're talking about Lone Survivor, you're talking about Deepwater Horizon, and you're talking about Patriots Day. That's 3 films in a row they have made together that have been great. Great films. So high intensity action, all that kind of stuff. This looked like completely my cup of tea. This movie is awful. Absolutely awful. Terrible movie. Now, I will say this. Let's talk about some of the redeeming things about Mile 22 for a second. Redeeming thing number 1. Some of the action in it is great. Some of the action in it is great. There's one fight scene in particular that takes place in a med bay, right? And in a nurse's station, med bay, whatever. I'm not going to give anything away about it, but just to say it is an amazing 3-person combat scene that was beautifully choreographed, pretty well shot, a little too much quick edit. That's, man, shaky camera and quick edit is so awful in action films. Anyway. But there's a little bit of that, but for the most part, terrific action scene. There's some good intensity in the movie along the way, but overall just falters. Let's start with the Mark Wahlberg character. You never like Mark Wahlberg's character. The opening of the movie suggests an important subplot in the film of the fact that he's got a condition. He thinks faster than everybody else. I can't remember the actual name of the condition they give it. And as a result, he keeps this yellow wristband that he flicks whenever he feels his mind racing too fast, right? So they introduce that, but it never applies to the narrative of the film in any way, right? So they do this big thing with the opening credits, setting up this important thing about this character that never comes into play in the movie. So that was kind of wasted. On top of that, the character is just a jerk. He's just an absolute jerk. They show glimpses of redemptive qualities about him, but as an audience, you never cheer for the hero. You never find yourself cheering for the hero because he's just such an ass. Now, granted, they try to be self-aware of that throughout the movie. All the characters around him constantly refer to him as an ass, and that's fine, but you think nobody would work with this guy. Like, I'm just sitting there watching this movie. I'm thinking nobody would ever work with this guy. Nobody would ever be in a work environment with him. No one would ever follow this guy. Nobody would ever develop any loyalty to this guy. Like, he was a completely unlikable lead, which kind of disassociates you from the movie when that happens, right? But let's go on to some of the more negative stuff here. I said some of the action was great. Some of it is some of the worst shot action I've seen in years. It's almost like Peter Berg, who I respect a great deal as a director. Like I said, his last 3 with Mark Wahlberg, awesome films. But this one, it's almost like there's a particular fight scene that happens in a diner, right? And again, I'm not going to give anything away. But it's almost like somebody went up to Peter Berg and said, I dare you to try to do a fight sequence with the worst shaky cam and quick edits in history. And Peter Berg went, I'll take you up on that bet. I didn't know what the F was going on. There's this great fight that you can hear a great fight going on. I had no bloody clue. I looked around and I saw people in my theater looking at each other like, are we supposed to know what's happening on screen? Like, we hear a lot of, oh, my spleen. Oh, you punched me in the face. Like, we hear a lot of that stuff, but all we see is, oh, I'm a great filmmaker. I'm making great action. And you don't understand what the hell is going on screen. It was brutal. Also, logic went right out the window. The underlying story, there's a mystery to it that starts to get revealed throughout the film. And by the time it gets revealed, you realize that made no sense. And again, I'm struggling here because I don't want to give anything away, but it's like, that story makes no sense whatsoever. Because there's no way you could have counted on this working. Like, for instance, there's even this one scene, like, you know the premise of the movie, right? This paramilitary group led by Mark Wahlberg, they've got an asset, right? This guy. And they got to get him to this airplane to get him to America. And it's 22 miles away. And there's going to be like a whole government in between them and that airfield that's going to try to stop them, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so we get all that. So you know there's going to be action along the way. There's this one part where they stop the car. Remember, these guys are all trying to kill them, right? All these bad guys have been trying to kill them out in the street in combat, blah, blah, blah. Then there's this scene where they pull up to a place and they're instantly surrounded by like 30 guys with guns. And the 30 guys with guns just let the good guys get out of the car and walk into a building with all the bad guys standing around there with their guns that have already been engaged in heavy, heavy fire combat. And they just let them walk in. And like, I could hear the guy next to me who I wanted to talk to so bad, but I heard the guy next to me who was just like complaining about this movie the whole way through. Respectfully, he was whispering to his girlfriend, but it's like, and why aren't they killing them right now? Like, and it's just all this stuff. But again, one of the big things is the main underlying story just made no sense. None. It was a frustrating movie to watch. And you know what? I could have got on board with it if the story flopped and all that kind of stuff, if you gave me really good action. And while it gives me one scene of really good action, it also delivers a lot of disappointing action where you can hear some great action scenes, but shaky camera, and it just all goes to hell. Just all goes to hell. I was really disappointed in this movie. It's just terrible. Especially disappointed because, like I said, Peter Berg and Mark Wahlberg have made 3 terrific films in a row that I have really enjoyed. Also, this side character played by Lauren, I'm forgetting Lauren's last name. She's the girl from she plays Maggie on The Walking Dead. Anyway, there's a side story going on with her and her family that had no point to the overall narrative. None. So that was just a waste of time. I will say this, Ronda Rousey is in this film, probably her best performance ever. She doesn't have many lines. She just mostly had to look brutal and look like she's rough and mean and blah, blah. And she had a couple of lines, and honestly, it's the best she's ever done. That's not saying a lot, but it is the best she's ever done. So I'll give it that as well. But now I'm grasping at straws to say positive things about this movie. Mile 22 is a massive disappointment. Don't waste your money. Maybe see it with A-List or Cinemia or MoviePass, whatever you get the chance, because there is some good action, but overall, man, it's just wildly disappointing. Okay, with that out of the way, let's get on to our main topics of the day. Now, how do we select our main topics? Well, it's actually really quite simple. You guys select our main topics by emailing them in to me. How do you submit a topic or a question to be on the John Campea Show? It's quite simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line. And as always, guys, keep those emails to 90 words or less. And maybe you will see your question or topic here on the John Campea Show. All right, let's get on with it with main topic number 1. And the first main topic today comes to us from Brian Knight, who writes, what if the Oscars have a 2-night Oscar show on Saturday and Sunday night? Saturdays show all the awards usually not broadcast and move the less popular awards, including the music, say a 2-hour show. Then Sunday, a 3-hour show with all the major awards. I know the awards on Saturday might be second class, but in truth, they are to the general public already anyway. All right, thanks a lot for the question. So we've been talking a little bit about the Oscars lately because primarily because of this ridiculous new category they want to introduce. Best popular film, morons. Absolute morons are going to ruin the show. Anyway, but there's also been other things being talked about, ways to shorten the show, all that kind of stuff. So one of the things that the Academy wants to do, besides the Popular Film Award, is to limit the show to 3 hours, award some of the lesser cared about categories during commercial breaks. So they still get their documentary or short, not taking anything away from those show. The Oscars want to keep it to 3 hours. So the idea here, 2-hour presentation, at which time they would give, or not a 2-hour presentation, a 2-night presentation, where they would give certain awards on the one night, certain awards on another night. It's an interesting idea, but there's 2 problems with it. Number 1, spreading it out over 2 nights really takes away from the event feel of it, right? It no longer feels like an event when you split it up over 2 nights, right? Super Bowl is an event. Something like World Series or the Olympics, you go day by day by day, pick to choose which one you want, blah, blah, blah. But the whole one night aspect of it really is the event. It makes the one night the big night of the movie year. The second and biggest problem is this. Nobody would watch that first night. If that first night was all about the technical awards and was all about short documentary and short live action and best song or something like that, no one's going to watch. And if no one's going to watch, nobody's going to want to broadcast it. No studio's going to want to broadcast it. So now you're right back in the same situation that they're in right now. The Oscars have a separate night about a week or 2 before the Oscars to honor some technical awards and some smaller awards. I think they should move a few more awards over to that night. And then they do a highlight of that night on the main Oscar show. And really, ultimately, that's what you'd be left with anyway. So for those reasons, I mean, it's good that you're thinking outside of the box, but for those reasons, I really don't think a 2-night Oscar ceremony would really work. All right, let's move on to the second main topic. And the second main topic today comes to us from Ryan Theobilt, I think. Theobo? Maybe it's just Theobo? I'm not sure. Ryan writes, sorry man, I'm butchering your name. John, I've been a fan of the Fast and Furious movies since the very first one back in 2001. It was heartbreaking losing Paul Walker. I saw that Paul's brothers were saying that they'd like to see Paul's character come back and that they'd be willing to stand in for him again. I think this would be fantastic. What do you think? All right, thanks a lot for the question, man. So for those of you who haven't heard about this, right now there's a documentary out, I believe it's called I Am Paul Walker, right? And while doing some press interviews to promote that documentary, Paul Walker's brothers, who of course served as stand-ins for Paul Walker while they finished up Fast and Furious 7 because Paul Walker had passed away halfway through shooting. Paul Walker's brothers kind of mentioned they'd like to see Brian, Paul Walker's character, come back. Here's what the two brothers had to say, okay? First of all, it was Caleb Walker who wrote, I just hope we get to, I don't know, have a little cameo and bring Paul back to save the day, and I get to help create that again. That's my dream, and I hope we get to do that in one of the future movies. Now, Paul's other brother, Cody Walker, went on to say this, I think there could potentially be a way to do it, but it would take a lot of thought and it'd have to be tasteful, added Cody. He was the real deal, the real car guy. And in his absence, I think it's lost its way in a big way. All right, so what we have here are the two brothers saying we'd like to see Paul Walker's character back. One of the first things that jumps out to me is Cody Walker. If you want to see your brother's character back and you want to stand in and play him again, don't lead off by insulting the movie franchise. I mean, again, look what he says here in the last thing here. The last line, in his absence, I don't know, I think it's lost its way in a big way. So if you really want to get your brother's character back in, and it feels like really at the bottom of this, you want to be in the movie, then you don't lead off with saying, oh, this movie franchise completely lost its way. It needs us to come back in and play our brother to make things right again. You don't lead, that's not a good way to lead off the conversation, dude. But it does raise and bring up the question, should Fast and the Furious look at maybe bringing him back? Look, you got the two brothers who are willing to stand in for him again. There's that. He's, of course, obviously, arguably the second most important character in the history of the franchise. There's that. Could it be honoring? Yeah, it could. But I'm going to tell you where I'm at on this. Where I'm at on this is you do not bring him back. You don't bring him back. For a couple reasons. One, he's not here. But two, you already gave the character the perfect send-off. Like, that scene, how many times have you seen it memed? Where Dom and Brian are driving side by side, they look at each other, smile, and then they drive their separate ways. It was a little cheesy, maybe, but very emotionally satisfying. It was a great way to send the Brian character off into the sunset. He was parting ways with Dom to go and pursue a new life. Had they not had that ending, I'm okay with recasting. I'm okay with them bringing back somebody else to play Brian. I'm good with all that stuff. But the fact of the matter is, you wrote off his character in such a perfect way already. You gave that character his true ending. You sent him off in the sunset in a glorious way that I thought was tasteful, respectful, and had massive impact. And I think the fact that a lot of us today still make memes about parting ways is a testament to how well that was handled and how well it was in the midst of an unbelievably difficult circumstance. I thought they handled that beautifully. It was the perfect ending. And I don't want to be a pessimist, but what Paul Walker's brother's statements really sound like to me is, we want to be in Fast and the Furious. That's what it sounds like more to me. And look, I hate thinking that way. And maybe it really is just coming from their place that they just like to see their brother honored more. And I hope that's the case. It really does, especially when they take a shot at the series. It really does kind of come across so unfortunately as, we want to be in the movies. And that would be unfortunate, but who knows? Maybe their motivations are great and all that kind of stuff. I just don't think it's what you should do. But that leads us to today's question of the day. And the question of today is simply this. Should the Fast and the Furious movies use Paul Walker's Brian character again? Should Fast and the Furious use Paul Walker's character Brian in their movies again? Look in the description of this video. And at the bottom of the description, you'll find a link. Click on that link. That'll take you to where you answer the question. So go and cast your vote. Now, I'm going to just check in right now. We just announced it, but let's see if any of you guys have responded already. And the page is loading. And as of right now, dear heavens, like 400 of you. That's the most we've ever had already. Okay, so 400 of you have already answered. And right now, 75% of you are saying, yes, you should have Brian's character back again. 25% of you are saying, no, they shouldn't. So surprise, surprise, you guys completely disagree with me. Again, I'm going to be voting for no, they shouldn't. I'm going to be voting for no, they shouldn't. You gave him the perfect send-off. You wrote him out of the story. It was a beautiful, perfect way to end it. You're just risking it at this point. But that's me. Right now, the majority of you guys are saying, yes, they should bring him back, which I think is really curious. We'll check in on this and give you the final results on Monday. So you guys got like 3 days to vote on this. Once again, jump down into the description of the video. Look at the very bottom of the description. You'll find the link for you where you go and cast your vote as to whether or not they should use Paul Walker's character again. All right. With that out of the way, let's move on to the next main topic today. And the next major topic today comes to us from Lewis with a 5, who writes, do you think we would ever get a third Independence Day film, as it was rumored after the second one came out and the film did leave it open for a sequel? All right. Speaking of completely horrible movies, Independence Day Resurgence. What a train wreck. One of the worst, I'd say top 20 worst wide release Hollywood films of all time. Like, you just run out of words to describe just how bad this movie is. Because I'm telling you, my friends, it was brutal. Just awful movie. Terrible, terrible movie. And yeah, so there you go. Now, of course, Emmerich, the director, he had plans to do 2 or 3 more Independence Day movies, starting with Independence Day Resurgence. We, of course, have heard nothing since. However, the assumption has been, well, we're never going to see another Independence Day movie again, but believe it or not, there is still a possibility we may get another Independence Day movie. There's 2 important reasons why we may still get another Independence Day movie. Number 1, the director Emmerich has not given up on it. I heard recently that Emmerich is still very much would like to do another one. He would still very much like to do another one and is apparently still trying to convince people to let him do another one. As long as he keeps pushing, the hope remains alive that we could get another one. There is still hope that we could get another one. Now, the other reason we have to accept that it's still possible, not however unlikely, it is still possible we could get another Independence Day movie, is because our common understanding is that Independence Day Resurgence was a massive financial flop. Well, in reality, it wasn't. You see, Independence Day Resurgence cost $160 million to make. That means, if you make around $400 million, you've pretty safely broken even. The fact of the matter is, Independence Day Resurgence almost made $400 million. Like, it made over $380 million. So while it was not a big moneymaker by any stretch of the imagination, it also was not the colossal flop that a lot of us seem to think it was. Critically, it was a colossal flop. Quality-wise, it was a colossal flop. But the reality is, when it comes down to money, if it did not break even, it came really close to breaking even. So it was not this Titanic-sized flop. Well, Titanic's a great movie, but it was not this massive Titan-sized flop that we all seem to just commonly accept that it was. It wasn't. It actually may have actually broken even. So when you take those 2 things into consideration, the recognizability, add on top of that the recognizability of the IP, and then you understand that, well, the last one almost broke even, and the director still really wants to do it. Look, I'm going to tell you right now, it is not 100% certainty that we're not going to get another Independence Day movie. I think it is still possible, however unlikely. I would set the over-under at like as high as 15%. I know a lot of people would say it'd be like 1%. I'd say 15%. A solid 15% chance we're going to get another Independence Day movie at some point. Again, that means it's an 85% chance that we won't, but I just think there's more of a chance than most people give it credit for. All right, let's move on to the final email topic today. And the final email topic today comes to us from Martin DeVille, who writes, "Hey, John, I saw in Slash Film that Jurassic Park is coming back to theaters for its 25th anniversary. And it said this: Universal and Fathom Events are teaming up to bring the only good Jurassic Park film back in theaters for 3 days this fall. September 16th, 18th, and 19th, the classic sci-fi action film will be shown in more than 500 theaters across the country. What do you think about this good or bad idea?" Well, first of all, I will disagree with Slash Film saying that the first film is the only good one. I disagree with that. There have been some bad ones, but I completely disagree. I think you're out to lunch if you say it's the only good one. There have been some good ones. Anyway, that being said, whenever we get the opportunity to sit down and watch one of these great classic movies the way they were meant to be seen on a big screen in a theater, that's always a good thing. It's never a bad thing. Now, will it make a lot of money? I don't know. It seems like it wasn't that long ago that they did a special re-release event for Jurassic Park again. So I feel like it's been done at some point. But again, I'll be there. Because really, how many times are you going to get an opportunity to watch the original Jurassic Park in a movie theater on the big screen? Not a lot of opportunities. So I know I'm going to be taking advantage of this to see this movie, the movie that started it all, and the movie that really just made the world. First of all, there is no more Star Wars movies if it wasn't for Jurassic Park, right? So, I mean, Jurassic Park was the movie that made George Lucas go, oh, I can make my new Star Wars movies. Now that I've seen what this technology can do now I can make my new Star Wars movies. So the reason there are more Star Wars movies is because of Jurassic Park. I think it's a great idea. I'm going to be there to watching it I might even go to watch it 2 nights when it's out. Again, I'm not sure if it's going to make any money or not, but I really don't care. I'm just looking forward to seeing those dinosaurs on the big screen again. I think that's going to be great. Okay, guys, with all that out of the way, let's go over and take some live questions from you guys. And we're going to start with, you know what, guys? It's really hot this morning, so I'm going to turn on my air conditioner. My apologies for the sound. You're going to hear this loud rumble in the background. That's my AC. But I need to have it on right now because I don't know if you can tell. I'm starting to melt in here. It's getting really warm in the studio. All right, so we're going to get things kicked off here with Ben Hayusa, who writes, "You want to F with me? Okay, you want to play rough? Okay, say hello to my little friend." Of course, Scarface and Antoine Fuqua. Still working on getting a new Scarface movie put together. They still want to do another Scarface. Now remember, before any of you start screaming about, you shouldn't do a remake of Scarface, remember, Scarface is a remake. The Scarface you know and love is a remake. So just keep that in mind. Okay, Ben Houston follows up with, "I just had chicken adobo last night, John. Just my all-time favorite Filipino dish. When was the last time you and Ann had some?" I actually had some last week. Ann and I, there's a great Filipino restaurant in Glendale, California, right next to Burbank, called Fiesta de Barrio is what it's called. Is the name of the restaurant. Fiesta de Barrio. And they have a killer pork adobo or beef adobo and chicken adobo. And their garlic fried rice. That combination is so killer. One of my favorite. Honestly, I'm not big on Filipino cuisine, just to be honest with you. Anne always rolls her eyes at me. But yeah, man, adobo, both chicken and beef adobo, like it a lot. Luke1234 writes, "Goddamn sexual Tyrannosaurus Rex, just like me, Jesse the Body Ventura from Predator." Another great line. We were talking about the other day how I think the best line from Predator is Jesse Ventura going, "Ain't got time to bleed." Great line. But that is a very close second. Also delivered by Jesse the Body Ventura. "You'd be a goddamn sexual Tyrannosaurus Rex, just like me." I mean, it's a great line. So good. Tongerverse Viking writes, "Greetings, John. Since you like Brendan Gleeson a lot as an actor, you really should see Mr. Mercedes. He is the lead in it, and he is so good." That's one of the main reasons I've been wanting to see it lately, is because I found out that Brendan Gleeson is the lead. Or one of the leads, at any rate. Brendan Gleeson, who is Donald Gleeson's dad, and Brendan Gleeson is one of the best character actors, like, of all time. Just one of the best character actors of all time. I love this guy. He's one of the big main reasons why I am curious to check that show out. Tonga vs. Viking follows up. Your favorite John Wayne movie. Mine equals Circus World. You know what? It's an unpopular choice. Not many people would say this one. But honestly, I really like his True Grit. Not considered one of his best ones by a lot of people, but I really love True Grit. And it's funny you mentioned John Wayne because I'm watching Preacher, and they have John Wayne come in and out of visions of the lead character once in a while, which is pretty cool. But yeah, I'm going to go with True Grit. I might change my mind on that, but for now I'm going to say True Grit. Let's see. James Welsh writes, who is the better director, Ivan or Jason Reitman? Oh, tough to say. They're very different directors. Like Ivan's movies and Jason's movies are very, very different movies. I'll just say this. Jason is clearly a great, gifted director. Jason Reitman is a great and truly gifted. You're talking about a pass on answering that. It's just too hard to try to compare them at this point. Not to mention, Ivan Reitman has had decades and decades and decades and decades as a filmmaker. Jason is still in the early part of his career, so let's hold off on that question for another 5 or 10 years. Zach Bartron writes, has there ever been any serious development on a Legend of Zelda movie? I'm really surprised it hasn't happened yet. No, there hasn't. I think Nintendo, ever since the infamous disaster that was the Super Mario Brothers movie, with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, I think Nintendo has been very hesitant to let any of their properties be turned into movies. And understandably so. I get it. I understand why they would be, but I think they have been very, very hesitant to move forward with any sort of movies on their properties because they saw what damage was done to them by a bad movie. And I just don't know that Nintendo is close to letting their properties, including Legend of Zelda, be turned into a movie because of the bad experience that they've had before. Tortellini at Noon writes, will you ever return to directing and make another feature? I don't know about directing. I have directed a couple of films. I've also produced a couple of films, like they were my own films. You know what? I think I enjoy producing more. I might direct. I don't know. I won't lie to you. I've been approached the last 2 or 3 months. I have been approached twice about producing certain films. Don't get me wrong. Don't get delusions of grandeur. It wasn't Disney or Paramount or Universal or anything like that. Not at all. It's just to keep your expectations in check. But I have been approached by a couple of independent filmmakers asking me to produce films. And I'm tempted. I think I would like to do that again someday, if I'm lucky enough to have the opportunity. And who knows, maybe I'll direct something at some point. I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's see. Zach Bartron writes, just want to say thanks for pronouncing my last name right. I couldn't tell you the number of times people forgot about the second R when looking at... Well, I think the first time I read your name, I think I might have said Zach Barton. And then I stopped for a second. Oh, no, there's another R. Zach Bartron. So there you go. Hey, dude, listen, you're talking to a guy with the last name Campea. Nobody ever gets my name right the first time they say it. Like Campy? Or they want to put the U on the end, like the French version, like Campo. It's like, no, Campea. But anyway, so I feel your pain, Zach. I feel your pain. James Welsh writes, how about a sequel to Jaws, ignoring the other films? Nah, Jaws 2's pretty good. Jaws 2's solid. Plus, there's no need, because, look, the only way you can really do that is if the shark lived at the end of the first Jaws. Since the shark did not live at the end of Jaws, spoiler alert, there's no need to reboot. You can just make another Jaws movie from scratch. You can just make another Jaws movie from scratch. Because it's not like you have to continue on the villain at any rate, because it's a different shark, right? Not to mention, I'd say, no, you don't wipe out Jaws 2. Jaws 2 is a good movie. Not as good as the first Jaws, but a lot of people like Jaws 2. Everything after that, yeah, you can wipe out. But now, because it's a different shark every single time, there's really no need to worry about the continuity, you know what I'm saying? Like you do with other movie franchises. Mark Blaza writes, doot, dee doot, dee doo, la 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 la. That's my impression of you, Campea. Deal with it. Yep, that's Whenever the jump happens, I'm do 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 la 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 la. That's pretty much a good imitation of me, actually. I can't argue with that. Unbeatable writes, hopefully the eventual new guy doesn't F up the Guardians 3 soundtrack. Yeah, well, I mean, it all depends. I have to feel like James Gunn, if he's already done his script and they're using his script, I wouldn't be surprised if he's got, which tracks he wants to use probably written right into the script. Now, of course, whatever director coming on board, they'll have to apply whatever their tastes are. But, I think there's a pretty good chance that whatever director comes on board saying, hey, James did a great job selecting the soundtrack for the first 2 movies. He's already picked out the soundtrack for this one. Why do I need to do any more work? Looks perfectly like a perfectly good sound list. At the same time, I wouldn't begrudge a director from changing up the songs because it's their movie now and they should be able to do that. But I got a feeling they probably won't change it much. I'm not basing that on anything. It's just speculation. But I got a feeling they'll probably keep whatever song selections James Gunn's already made. Let's see. Limakel writes, favorite Lucifer episode? Mine would be A Priest Walks Into a Bar. That's a great episode. Like, there are great episodes because they're ripping funny. There are great episodes because major events happen. And there are great episodes because there's just great introspection and character development. That is one of the great character development episodes of Lucifer, was A Priest Walks Into a Bar. I love that episode. Especially as the two of them are just talking, the piano's playing. I don't know, man. That's too tough to pick. I'd have to think about it. I just so adore every episode of Lucifer. Like, every episode I just enjoy. And I just enjoy them so much. Man, I can't pull one off the top of my head. Other than to say that the one you're bringing up is a great choice. That's a great one. Let's see. Next one. Mason Kackman writes, A Bug's Life, I think, is underrated movie. Still as funny when I first saw it. Spacey was great. Hey, listen, I honestly don't think that it's an underrated movie because I think when you ask most people, what do you think about Bug's Life? I think everybody smiles when you say Bug's Life. I don't think there's a lot of people out there trashing on Bug's Life. When you say Bug's Life, most people smile and remember it fondly. Look, it's not one of like the top 3 greatest Pixar films of all time, but it's a great little movie, especially when you consider, remember right around the same time, it might have been DreamWorks or another studio, put out a competing movie called Ants. Remember that? I think Sylvester Stallone was one of the voices in that. Which one clearly won that battle? Obviously A Bug's Life. It's still fun too. You go to Disneyland here in California, they got a Bug's Life world there and all that kind of stuff. Bug's Life is a delightful, charming, funny little movie. That I just like, what are you going to do, Hopper? Anyway, I just like it. I like it a lot. It's a solid little film. Again, not one of my top 3 Pixar films, but a solid little film nonetheless. Murray Reich writes, and we got to jump. La 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 la. Okay, Murray Reich writes, Mile 22 was a huge letdown, no kidding. Some action scenes good, but the story itself was poorly pieced together. Shaky cam, terrible ending, awful. Me and friend were sitting in our seats pondering of what we saw. Luckily, I saw it with A-list. I completely agree, Murray. Completely agree. Now, look, I thought there was a couple of redeeming elements. 1 or 2 decent action scenes. A couple of cool, funny lines. Ronda Rousey, maybe better than she's ever been. Although, granted, it was a tiny little role. There was some redeeming stuff about it, but look, man, I had the exact same reaction walking out of the theater. And also thinking to myself, thank God I saw this with A-list. Thoroughly disappointed. Again, especially considering the last 3 films that Wahlberg and Peter Berg have done together. Especially when you consider how good those last 3 movies were. And then they do this. And yeah, man, just thoroughly, that's the word, letdown or disappointment. That's really what I get the most, is letdown and disappointment. James Bonner writes, Hey John, I rewatched the first Thor film the other night, and I must say I really felt the pain Loki went through. The hurt and the betrayal on his face when he discovers what the Allfather kept from him. It's a great scene. Look, that is why the Loki character in that first Thor movie is regarded as one of the best Marvel villains ever, because there was such depth to him, there was emotion to him, there was motivation to him. It was handled so brilliantly by the great director Kenneth Branagh. It was just wonderfully handled. And you're right, the way Tom Hiddleston portrayed that scene, finding out that he was not truly Odin's son, and he loves Odin. All he has ever wanted was Odin's love and approval. That's all, and recognition. That's all he's ever wanted. And it was so beautifully played and so beautifully laid out. I just love, one of the many reasons why Thor 1 is one of my top 10 all-time favorite comic book films. And I think one of the most underrated comic book films of all time, to be honest with you, because that scene is just great. Nerd Polemist writes, I'd love a Wiz of Oz remake with Margot Robbie as Dorothy, Jessica Lange as the Wicked Witch of the West, Armie Hammer as Scarecrow, Billy Meg Nuzzin, I'll be honest, I don't know who that is, as Carrie Lyon, and Benedict Cumberbatch as the Tin Man. Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, that's a tough one to do, though, right? I think we might have talked about that the other day. If I were a studio head, I'd be terrified at the notion of making another Wizard of Oz. Absolutely terrified by it. Because it's just one of those movies that everybody loves. Not everybody loves Apocalypse Now. Not everybody loves Pulp Fiction. Not everybody loves Star Wars. Everybody loves Wizard of Oz. It is a film that for generations, parents have passed down to their kids and watched and shared with their kids. It is, in terms of the most beloved films of all time, it's got to rank way up there. Way up there. And it would be tough to do. Again, as far as the individual casting goes, you know me, I don't care. Personally, I think Margot Robbie's a little old for the role. I would like to see somebody younger to play Dorothy. But as far as any of the other roles, I don't care, just as long as they're good actors. And by the way, I really didn't mind that James Franco Oz the Great and Powerful movie that Sam Raimi directed. I actually thought that one was pretty good. Nowhere near as good as the original, not an all-time great movie, nothing like that, but I thought it was pretty good. I had a good time with it. I was a little bit disappointed that it didn't do well enough for them to make another one, you know. But yeah, that's a tough one to try to do again, man. That's a really tough one to try to do again. Let's see. Krieger119 writes, one of my favorite characters on Archer, by the way. Mile 22 was a mess. However, I'm not a Ronda Rousey fan, but her performance was way better than anything she's done. That WWE stuff must be paying off. Yeah, I mean, let's face it. It wasn't a difficult role to play, but give credit where it's due. She looked less out of place than she did in any of the other movies. Like, remember how brutally out of place she was in Fast and the Furious? I think it was 8. 7 or 8. I can't remember which one Ronda Rousey was in. Maybe it was 7. Remember how bad she was in that? And it was just this tiny little role? That's a night and day difference between that movie and this one. Like this one, tiny role, not a lot to do, but what she was asked to do, she did well. That's progress, ladies and gentlemen. That's progress. Let's see. Jeffrey Podolsky writes, do you think Horn got tongue lashing by Uncle Bob and that led to the gun compromise? I doubt it, because I have to believe, look, I believe Alan Horn absolutely touched base with Bob Iger. Now, apparently Bob Iger was on vacation when Horn did this, but you have to believe that he at least communicated with Bob Iger before doing anything like this. I don't know if Bob Iger knew the specific statement Alan Horn was going to make, like, we are severing all business relationships with him. I don't know about that, but look, what Alan Horn did was idiotic. But Alan Horn is not an idiot. Look, you're not an idiot, but you have probably done some idiotic things. I like to believe I'm not an idiot, but hey, man, I've done idiotic things. We all do idiotic things. What Alan Horn did was idiotic. The way he so quickly made that statement without proper consultation, without talking to enough people, without taking time to really think about what should we do and giving it a few more days, having an opportunity to sit down with James Gunn one-on-one, talk through it, blah, blah, blah. And if you came to the same decision, fine. But the fact that he did it so quickly and made such a stark statement like, we are severing all business relationships with him, that was idiotic. that was a bad day at the office for Alan Horn. But let's not confuse that with and let's not lose sight of the fact that the truth is Alan Horn's a genius. He is. You just look at his history and his career and how he has shepherded this whole MCU thing. Like, we all think Kevin Feige, and rightly so, but there's a guy standing above Kevin Feige, and that's Alan Horn, who has made sure Kevin Feige's had everything he's needed. He's given Kevin Feige to do permission on the things he wants to do. He's stopped Kevin Feige from doing some other things, and maybe that's all been for the best. But Alan Horn's a smart guy. Super smart guy. So, no, I think Iger was probably on board with him. Maybe Iger didn't realize the type of statement Horn was going to be making, but I doubt Uncle Bob gave him a tongue lashing. I just got to think cooler heads have prevailed a bit. And you know what? I honestly think this. If Alan Horn hadn't painted himself into such a corner with that statement, I think there's a chance they might have brought James Gunn back. But Alan Horn left himself no wiggle room. When you come out and say, this is against our policies and we're severing all business relationships with you, you can't bring him back after that. Even if you want to bring him back after that, you just can't. So I just got to believe it had more to do with cooler heads prevailing. All right. Alex Shayatovich writes, who do you think will be in the Super Bowl this year? Ooh, good question. Honestly, if I had to guess right now, I'm thinking it's a rematch of last year. I really do. I think it is a rematch of the Patriots and the Eagles. It's going to be the Patriots and the Eagles again this year. Barring anything crazy that happens to either team, I really do think it's going to be a repeat of last year. That's my guess right now at any rate. Let's see. John Hine writes, Mile 22 at 21% on Rotten Tomatoes, hoping it can make it to 22%. Actually, last night it was at 25. So it was already at 22 probably for a minute, then went down to 21. If it's dropping like that, I have a hard time it'll get back up to 22. But you're right, there is something poetic about it getting at 22% for sure. Good observation. History Soup writes, I'll try to limit myself to one Lucifer episode a week. Oh, good luck, History Soup. He's talking about, of course, Netflix saved Lucifer. It's coming back, and it's going to release all 10 episodes at once. I would like to think I would have the discipline to only watch one episode a week, but who are we kidding? I'm going to watch 6 episodes the moment it drops, and then I'll probably watch the final 4 the next day. I will watch the entire season of Lucifer in one 24-hour period. I like to think I wouldn't, and I cheer you on, History Soup. I hope you can do it, but I absolutely would not be able to. Let's see here. Ed Hannon writes, I used to watch your other shows every day, but fell off a year ago. My movie news passion has recently been reignited. Turns out I don't just like movie news. I like your movie news. Big fan. #filthy. Oh, Ed, thanks so much, man. That's really kind of you to say. And the fact that you would even take a minute as a super chat to send that in instead of just emailing it to me. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And it's just great being part of the film fan community. And I'm super glad that you're here. That was very nice of you to say. Thank you so much. You're a good person. So thanks for that, Ed. All right. John Hine writes, can you do your Doug Jones fisherman impression again? Oh, God. I can't even remember what I was doing about that. I can't... not fish, like the fish man, like from the Del Toro movie, from Shape of Water. What was it? It was something along the lines of... Doug Jones in The Shape of Water, ladies and gentlemen. Doug Jones. I love Doug Jones. By the way, Doug Jones is one of the main characters in Star Trek Discovery, which I'm watching, and I'm really enjoying right now so far. Ron Swanson, greatest name ever, writes, Universal Orlando just posted on their blog that their AMC theater will turn into a Cinemark. Is this a good or bad change in your opinion? Well, a theater's a theater. I mean, for whatever reason AMC wants to move out, I just hope that doesn't happen to Universal in LA, because Universal Studios in LA, which is right up the street from me, has a big, massive AMC City Walk theater with one of the few true IMAX screens in Los Angeles. I hope that doesn't become something else, because I got my AMC A-list card and I want to go there. As far as Orlando, I have no opinion on that because I don't live in that neighborhood. But I certainly hope that's not a trend, because I want to use my A-list at that AMC Universal City Walk. Very, very much. Thank you very much. Let's see. Preston Walden writes, showing my mom 71 Avengers Infinity War for the first time. At 71, she loves comic book movies, Star Wars, and bad shark movies. Excited to see her reaction to Infinity War. You know what's killing me? My mom loves these movies too. And it is killing me that I have not been able to watch Avengers Infinity War with my mom. It's killing me. And honestly, my mom, as many of you guys, if you watch me for any period of time, you know my mom recently had heart surgery. And she came through, and I was planning on going back, but then the money, it's not cheap. The money I was going to use to go back, I gave to somebody else because somebody else needed it more than I did. And I won't go into all of that. But, so I have not been able to go home and see my mom, which is killing me. I'm hoping I can soon, before Christmas, because my mom's home now and all that kind of stuff. And one of the very first things I'm going to want to do is sit down and watch Infinity War with her. That's one of the very first things I want to do when I get there. So I envy you, man. That's awesome. It is great having a mom who likes this stuff too. Because my mom's the one who gave me my love of Star Wars. Like, my mom's the one who passed Star Wars on to me. So, I mean, it's just great when you can share that stuff, man. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. James Dixon, by the way, I'm just going to fly through these last few ones here, guys. James Dixon writes, hey, John, people ask the question, how are Marvel going to introduce mutants into the MCU if the deal is done? But nobody questions magic in Doctor Strange. Well, because the reason is you can explain, you can say magic's been there the whole time, but nobody's talked about it. Mutants is a different thing. Mutants, at least in the X-Men universe, have been around and publicly known and talked about things since the 60s, right? So how do you suddenly say nobody's ever heard of or talked about mutants? Magic is a secret world, but mutants, at least in the X-Men universe, is something that's been a big public issue for decades. So they're two really different things there, James. So one is you can just say, hey, yeah, there's a secret world where magic is done. Okay, that's fine. That the general public doesn't know about. Okay, but in X-Men world, the public has known about mutants and mutation and all that kind of stuff since the 60s. Hence, people asking the question, how is Marvel going to integrate that and deal with that? How are you going to do that consistently with the universe you set up with, right? So they're really two different scenarios that go in there. A fair question, but I just think they're two different scenarios. Dancing Dog 60, what a great name, writes, just sends in a super chat. Thank you so much, Dancing Dog. Blake Carson writes, keep up the awesome work. I love watching your show. Thank you so much, Blake. I love that you watch the show, so thank you for that, man. Raphael's Creative Style, another great name, just sends in a super chat. Thank you, guys. Like, seriously, thank you for the support, guys. Dancing Dog 60 follows up, Gunn and Batista for DC for a Lobo adaptation. Hey, don't laugh. We've been talking a bunch lately about the fact that Warner Brothers is one of the studios that has let it be known that they're going to offer James Gunn a movie as soon as he's separated from Disney. I've heard several people mention Lobo. I don't know that that's going to be it. I'm just mentioning that, Dancing Dog, because you're not the only one who's brought that up. You're in good company. A lot of other people have been thinking about Lobo too. Let's see here. Roy L. writes, in my opinion, Buffy the Vampire Slayer paved the way for shows like Supernatural. Sarah Michelle Gellar should reprise her character on Supernatural. I think there's a rights issue there. And they're doing, Joss Whedon is helping them getting a new Buffy the Vampire Slayer going. And I don't think it's CW. So there's a lot of different things. Look, but remember, Buffy the Vampire Slayer had the way paved for it by other things before it. So, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer is a very different show from Supernatural, in my opinion. But again, look, I would not object to Freddie Prinze Jr.'s wife appearing on Supernatural in any way, shape, or form, particularly as Buffy. That would be great, but it's not the right studio. There would be rights issues. That's why something like that couldn't happen. But it would be cool to see, wouldn't it? Roy L. follows up with, my wife told me to tell you that you can wait to rent... Oops. Sorry. My wife told me to tell you... Guys, please don't send any more Super Chat questions. We're out of time. My wife told me to tell you that you can wait to rent Teen Titans Go if you can't make it out. She laughs so much watching it. It is crazy, especially considering how stupid that movie looks. and it didn't do very well at the box office. But it is crazy how much people who have seen it are telling me they really liked it. You know, including Jason Inman. Jason Inman was saying that he really liked it too. And I got people on the show like you, Roy, or at least your wife, saying that she really liked it. So I am definitely going to have to check it out. I am definitely going to check it out. Anne is really wanting to see it too, so obviously I have to. But it is crazy how many people are saying how much they like it. John Jariasanat writes, Fox is reportedly developing a 24 Young Jack Bauer prequel with Legacy failing. Do you think this is a good idea? Honestly, no. I don't. I think they've run the 24... Look, sometimes you get an old car and you just think, I'm just going to keep driving it till I drive it into the ground. I'm going to let it serve me till it serves me. I feel like 24 is that IP for them. They've driven it till they've driven it into the ground. I move on from 24. Move on from it. I got to say, Don, I do not think it's a good move. Now, watch. It's going to be the biggest hit they've ever had. But yeah, with Legacy kind of falling on its face and all that kind of stuff, I just don't think it's a good move. Tacky75 says, let's kick some ice. I've got to get those quotes in there. Joe Everett writes, your thoughts on the new Tarantino movie? Well, I haven't seen it. All we've seen is a picture. Look, it's called Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We got Margot Robbie. You got Brad Pitt. You got Leonardo DiCaprio. And those are your leads. And then it's filled with an all-star cast after that. It's set during the era of the Marilyn Manson murders, or the Charlie Manson murders, I should say. Marilyn Manson murders would be something very different. During the era of the Charlie Manson murders, I don't think the movie's about that, but that serves as the backdrop. Margot Robbie's playing Sharon Tate. Hey, look, it's a Quentin Tarantino movie. It's set in a fascinating period. You got an incredible cast with Quentin Tarantino directing it. I'm looking forward to it, man. It looks good. All right, last question of the day comes to us from Wessyman Arts, who writes, John, I love the show. Thank you so much, man. Anyways, I'm a high school filmmaker. Good for you. That's awesome. Would you ever consider watching a short film of mine sometime? I usually got to say no to that kind of stuff, just because literally, I kid you not, Wessyman, that I literally get people every day asking me to watch their stuff. And I don't have time for that. And if I did for some, it would be unfair that I didn't for others. So, hey man, though, here's hoping that your stuff catches some traction and it just naturally comes across my desk and I get to watch it sometime. I'll look forward to that. And Raphael's Creative Style just throws in one more thing for support. Thank you so much, Raphael's Creative Style. I appreciate that. But Wessyman, keep going with your filmmaking. Good on you for doing that. Tell stories. Tell some great stories. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget, today, open mic is at a special time. Instead of 2 p.m., it's actually going to be at 1 p.m. because Ann and I got to leave town a little bit later this afternoon to go out, up north to Northern California for a friend's wedding. We're going to be gone for the weekend. So once again, open mic this afternoon is at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. I hope you guys can join me then. All right, guys, that will do it for me for now. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until the next video, bye-bye.